One, two, three. Hey, what's up? This is Will Spur with Abysmal Hymns, and I am back with Reza Mills, and we are going over the top five in excess songs. We want to start focusing in on maybe specific artists, do something a little different. And so we're going to go through our top five favorite in excess songs. Some of these have definitely stayed with me over the years. And, I think we first kind of got this thought because, I think Reza had said that INXS was one of his favorite, like, guilty pleasure bands. And I always felt that they're, like, pretty a legit band, I think that they, particularly, I mean, I would put INXS in a same kind of tier as like REM and U2 and those kinds of huge bands from the 80s that came from pretty, obscure new wave, almost ska uh backgrounds. So, what's your thoughts on them?
Yeah, so basically, I say guilty pleasure of sorts because when you mention that to anybody that you like in excess, people sort of go, "Really? In excess?" And I think part of that is due to the fact that obviously, I mean, I was pointing out the obvious. They had a very charismatic and very attractive frontman. So obviously the ladies were going to latch on as a result of that. But then you sort of think, well, hang on a minute, Soundgarden and Nirvana and Pearl Jam to a degree had that. So why them? Why are they seen as credible and in excess? I don't know. It's weird in any case, and kind of, I think it's kind of held them back as well as projecting them at the same time. Obviously, on a commercial level, they did really, really well. But I suppose amongst quote unquote serious music journalists, I guess they were a little bit, they're not exactly taken seriously as a result. So it's kind of unfair, but what can you do?
And it's one of those things maybe time will tell.
Mm, for sure.
Cool. Well, you want to get us started?
I certainly will. Okay, so this is kind of in a loose chronological order. So I'm going to start right at the very beginning, and you sort of touched on new wave and ska. And I'm going to mention their very first single, which was Simple Simon from 1980. The band formed in 77 and they released this as their first single. It's included on a dreadfully titled 1982 compilation called Inaccessive, as well as another compilation called Stay Young, and it wasn't a part of any album. And it just has this very sort of quirky XTC vibe about it that I really love. It's the kind of new wave that I like that has that very bouncy sort of feel to it. It's almost like they've been listening to drums and wires on repeat before they wrote this. And it's just such a fun way to start off your career. Very different to what they would do later on. Much, much different. There's no sort of nothing sort of sexual or seductive about it. It's just very much of its time. But I think a really solid start to their career.
Right. And so I'm gonna kind of lean into a three album period of theirs. Like that song, I don't know, but I
Mm,
went back and listened to a lot of the earlier stuff,
yeah,
getting ready for this. And I can still see how, that like ska influence crept into even their more popular stuff because they had like a big, almost like Tower of Power horn sound. And I typically don't like horns. Like I don't like ska.
no,
It's just, too
yeah,
happy for me.
yeah, ditto. Yeah, I agree.
But I mean, if horns done right, I mean, one of my favorite artists plays saxophone. So, I don't it's all in how it's handled.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'll have to go back and listen to some of these like odds and ends compilations and see what I'm missing out on though.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's nowhere near as accomplished as what they do later on, but it's still worth having and very credible for yeah, for a bunch of 20-year-olds.
Right, right.
Cool.
For sure. So my first song, which I think that I've already mentioned to you,
Hmm.
is from Kick. And I think it's not going to be a coincidence that I'm going for all the darker songs. Um, But they have that side to them. Obviously, I mean, we know what happened to Michael Hutchinson, so
Yeah.
there's always them that kind of adds some legitimacy. And I think it also separates them from the maybe not the Nirvanas and Soundgardens, but the Pearl Jams,
Mm.
because there was something obviously broken in him that he was trying to fix, and it came out in music, and I think that that's the best way for it to come out.
Sure.
I'm gonna pick Devil Inside from Kick,
Nice. Very nice.
and I guess it has all these seductive qualities that you were referring to, even though, it's not that type of song. It's not as like a sexual song like some of the others on the album, even though that's like implied, I guess there's a woman with a look in her eyes. Um, but it's one of his better vocal performances too, because you get to hear that contrast of his range, which is
Mm.
big for me. Obviously, if I like King Diamond, I like people with contrasting range.
Yeah, that riff, I mean, that whole record, and I'll obviously be featuring a couple of tracks from it as well. That whole record, those riffs are absolutely killer. Uh,
Hmm.
I mean, and Devil Inside especially. I'm sure the video has a scene of them in some sort of snooker hall or something. I can't remember, but yeah, it's just so cool. And so when anyone says, "Oh, in excess," I'm like, seriously, go and listen to that.
Right, which that to me holds up against, Depeche Mode or,
Oh.
any of that kind of more new wave leaning post-punk,
Mm,
I
for
think,
sure.
you
Yeah,
know.
nice man. Yeah, nice one. All right, so I've chosen a track. So obviously you can't feature every album here. So any albums that I miss out on, I still like. It's just you have to be selective. So I've gone for a track called Original Sin from their 1984 album The Swing. And this was an album produced by Nile Rodgers, of course, of the band Chic. And this particular track it is pretty much very disco-y, as quite unsurprisingly so. And I think it really kind of marked because I think The Swing was their fourth record, and it was quite a significant album because I think they were really starting to make headway now. The first three records were great for what they were, but they were kind of a bit more sort of like a bit more underground. I think this is the record up until about 1990, I'd say, which it's kind of the block of records which I recommend people start with when it comes to INXS. So yeah, Original Sin is just such a funky tune, really kind of cheesy video, but still quite cool with them all on sort of motorbikes and everything. And yeah, definitely a favorite.
Cool. Yeah, that is a good one. That was covered in the range of songs that I dipped into when I was kind of going back and rediscovering some of these albums. Because Kick is probably the album that I spent the most time with.
Yeah.
But, there are a couple of albums that, you know, I gave a lot of rotation to when they came out, because it was a weird kind of time for music, even when NXS was like in their heyday, because you either had like hair metal or the biggest band to kind of do what they did was probably
Mm,
Duran Duran, I
true.
think.
I can hear that.
And as Duran Duran's popularity was kind of waning, NXS was kind of taking their place
Yeah.
um in that market is kind of how I see it. So this album is going to be from 1982 is where this song's coming from. Um, which is the Shuba album,
Oh
and
yeah.
my pick is going to be Don't Change.
Okay. Yep. Cool.
As I like his vocal on it. It's a good strong guitar riff. It's like kind of like an anthem without being cheesy.
Mm,
And but when you hear it, after if it's the first time you hear it and you don't have the heads up that it's in excess, it takes a little while for that to kind of settle in with you.
sure. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that is a terrible album title. I don't even know what that means. Cuba, sure. I don't even get it, but yeah, it's a good tune. Isn't that quite sort of a ballady sort of song, if I remember? I'm
No, it's the
trying to remember it actually. It's been a while since I've listened to
yeah,
that
it's the
one.
last song, which it feels like it would be the first song.
Right. Ah, okay, fair enough. Yeah,
It's
cool.
pretty
That's
upbeat, pretty more not hard rock, but harder rocking than a lot of stuff they did up to this point.
sure. Cool. Yeah, that's an album I've kind of neglected a little bit, but yeah, I'll definitely have to dig into that. It's a song I've kind of heard in the periphery, but I've never properly sort of given it a true listen. But probably because, like you, I've kind of focused on sort of the later material,
Right.
perhaps.
No,
Cool.
yeah, it's worth checking out for sure.
Very good. All right. So, my next choice. Okay, so the next couple is going to be from Kick. I'll just get that out of the way. And the first of these, I wanted to go for a couple of deeper cuts. Of course, you've mentioned Devil Inside, and there's obviously Never Tear Us Apart and all of that stuff, which is cool. But I've gone for the opening track, Guns in the Sky. The first time I ever heard this album, that song just hit me right from the off. That really cool sort of it kind of reminds me of the Rolling Stones that had that sort of swagger to it. And the video as well has sort of Michael just sort of strutting through this hotel sort of, I don't know what you call it, the hallways, if you like. It's just such a amazing opener and it really sort of sets up the album brilliantly. And that riff, it's easily as good as anything Keith Richards could have put out. And I don't really like the Rolling Stones, but I think it's probably kind of what the Rolling Stones should have been doing in the 80s instead of bloody awful albums they were doing. You know, oh my God. Um, so yeah, really, really great opener to what is a classic record.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I like that song. There were so many songs from Kick
Yeah.
that you could pick. I mean, because I don't think there's any bad songs on it, you know. In
No.
fact, my next one, I had to fight between this one and Mystify.
Okay.
And it turned out that this one is just the riff is so iconic. So I don't think you can talk about INXS without talking about this song. So I'm gonna pick from Kick, I Need You Tonight.
Yay.
Because that riff is, you can hear that and you automatically know what it is before the bass line goes boom, 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 boom.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a killer tune. That's just like is that's the bit where I'm just trying to recall because I listened to it recently. Whispers at the beginning,
Yep.
doesn't yeah, that's it. Yeah. Yeah, that is really, really cool. None of the songs on here are anything other than spectacular. I mean, some of their other records is like the odd skippable track, but there isn't a single duff number on this particular record. So yeah, great one. And really, again, that kind of very seductive sort of vibe.
Right. And if you were gonna make just a total like top 10 of the 80s list, I think that this album would be one of the more defining albums of the 80s.
Man, isn't it just? Yeah, that's really, really cool. Sweet, yeah, good one. Classic track. All right, so I've got another kick track lined up for you, and again, I wanted to go for deeper cuts just to kind of keep it interesting for folk, you know. So I've got a track called Mediate. And this is really understated. The reason I sort of started getting into this song because there's a band I've reviewed quite a few times called Lotus Thrones, and they covered this song. And then I sort of went back and listened to it, and I was like, oh yeah, it's actually quite dark and a lot more restrained and I would suppose introspective than the other numbers on here. It's kind of again, I don't want people to think when I say post-punk that suddenly I'm talking about the Chameleons here. You know, it's still in excess, but it's way more, as I say, introspective. It's just Michael musing on things, and the videos kind of this very strange sort of loose take on Bob Dylan's Subterranean Homesick Blues, you know, with the cue cards and all of that sort of thing. So yeah, definitely very, very interesting tune and one that I think slight sort of a bit more under the radar for this particular record.
I think you're right in saying it's post-punk because it
Yeah.
makes me think of what it might sound like if Ian Curtis was reading Dr. Seuss. Um,
That's a good point. Yeah.
I could see that happening.
Yeah, I mean the videos, I mean it's kind of goofy, as I say. I mean, the thing about NXS is I do like them. Some of their videos are not brilliant, but I mean obviously like Need You Tonight is a good video, but this one I don't like Bob Dylan at all, so it's just like, oh God, and another band kind of, harking back to him, but whatever. It's a good enough song, so for me to forgive them that.
Right, for sure. I can see that.
Yeah. Cool.
So my next one is going to be the title track from Listen Like Thieves.
Ah, okay.
Just because it's another one, and it's also another one where I can hear that kind of Rolling Stones influence,
Mm, yeah.
Um, but the chorus just fits perfect. It's just one of those songs where everything is happening at the right place in the right time,
Mm,
and it's hooky, you know. At the end of the day, I mean, these are songs that we're talking about that I know I've been listening to since the 80s. So, and it also can be said when this stuff was coming out, INXS was one of the only bands like this that I was listening to at the time.
mm.
Um, Everything else that I was listening to was metal. So, because in 1982 I would go from listening to this to, you know, Diary of a Madman. So,
Sure.
um, but that's kind of, so I would say that they were kind of like the gateway drug into them, and David Bowie were the gateway drug for me into listening to things that weren't metal. And
Mm.
eventually got me to listen to, The Cure and Jesus and the Mary Chain, which would have been I think the third band that I picked up that was not metal would have been that Dark Lance album by Jesus and the Mary Chain. But these
Nice.
guys kind of primed the pump for it, so.
Mm. Yeah, I can't help but think of this particular record. It kind of reminds me of although it came before, what sort of you two would go on to do with Joshua Tree. I don't know why. There has this, I don't know, there's this sort of expansiveness to it, this sort of desert sort of vibe going on. Of course, it doesn't, helps that I suppose Bono and Michael Hutchence were friends, very good friends. So it kind of reminds me of that. Maybe there's another band, I don't know if you know, like Midnight Oil. It has that
Right.
kind of vibe to it as well. Again, that sort of, it's kind of arena rock without being Bon Jovi.
Right, right, right. And I
If
mean,
that,
maybe some of that comes from the fact that they were from Australia,
sure.
so there was not certain influences that were, I mean, Bon Jovi was from New Jersey, you know.
Yeah, sure.
They were surrounded by bad music. How could they be anything but?
Very true. Very true.
I mean, what
Awesome.
were they listening to? They were like, John Bon Jovi was caught between listening to Bruce Springsteen and Aerosmith, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, or even I don't know, yeah, I suppose or any one of those AOR bands, I guess, Foreigner, I don't know.
Mm.
Anything of that kind of ilk, or Boston probably, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, but and I always heard that Bon Jovi was one of these more contrived
Oh.
projects that like mafia money was behind. Um, like
We
Linda,
have,
like I think Pat Benatar was in the same boat,
yeah,
you
there was
know,
loads of silly bands of that kind of variety.
where NXS did not have that, big money behind them at first. You
No.
know, I think it was not until Kick that the record labels were like, okay, do whatever.
Well, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And even then, even at their most commercial, like I don't find anything embarrassing about it. It just feels so natural, and it feels like such a natural progression. Unlike, say, Metallica, going on to do something ridiculous like Saint Anger or something. This feels far more fluid, and it's like, Yeah, great.
Right. And I think that that's kind of the mark of a good band is if you can transition into what I call like even with The Cure when Robert Smith has to pay the bills,
Yeah.
then he whips out a Love Cats or a Friday I'm in Love. Now I hate those songs, but I would rather hear that than some of the other bands we were talking about,
Agreed. Yeah, even the
where they're going
worst.
from one thing into a jarring transition, which is like pandering for radio play.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, INXS never felt like that. I mean, they never made any secret of wanting to be successful, but there you go. So, my last choice, I suppose, as it were, is from the album X, and I was kind of weighing up which one. I thought Suicide Blonde, but I went for Disappear. I don't know what it is about this song. It's kind of a silly song in some ways. That do 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 bit. It's almost like a bit sort of, I don't know, the kind of thing Paul McCartney would come up with. That ridiculous sort of twee melody. But then he does this sort of really lush. I'm not even going to try and do my interpretation of it. But then he does this really sort of lush sort of main vocal during the verses. And also you have that, and there's really slamming sort of, I don't know, I think it's an acoustic guitar, where it just builds and builds and builds. So yeah, I think it's just a really killer, catchy, um, fun tune, somewhat goofy, but still really well put together. And also there's a really good, I think there's a, if you buy the single, there's a really cool cold cut remix of the track What You Need, which was on the album that you were talking about before. Um, so that's definitely worth checking out for that reason too.
Cool. Yeah, well, we're gonna about to go back because I don't remember that song. I do, like, granted, with that X album, I have to spend more time with it.
Sure.
And it's one of those that you can kind of dig back into now. Now, I will not listen to any In Excess without Michael Hutchinson on it,
Ditto. Agreed.
Um,
Yeah. That's why I've sort of stated, like, for me, it's like a block of three, like 1984 to 1990, then big period. Then you've got the early years, and then you've kind of got like about 92 till about his sad passing in 97. Anything after 97, it's not even in excess, it's just some god awful tribute band, really. So that's how I see it.
oh yeah, totally. And the way that it was done put a
Oh,
bad taste in my mouth. Pulling somebody from a reality TV show
did you know
was
they asked Mike
just,
Patton to front the band?
yeah. I don't
Uh,
even know about that.
that would
Yeah.
have been hilarious, but
Yeah, I'm not.
that was so funny. That would have
I
been
can't believe that how he would take it seriously. I don't think he would.
no, it's quite funny.
That would
But
be, I could see him
yeah,
doing some of it, but yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't, and it would be hard pressed for me to think that that was even his thing.
yeah, yeah. I mean, Patton can be a bit testy and a bit snobby at the best of times.
Right.
I don't think he would be taking it too seriously somehow.
Right. And it's not a knock on an excess to say, well, I don't think Mike Patton would do it. I mean, Mike Patton wouldn't join the Cure. What are you talking about?
Of course not. It's unless it's
It's just
some weird.
not what he does.
I know, unless it's some weird Bolivian flute music or
Yeah, him and
something.
Robert Smith will put out a Mongolian waltz album
Yeah, quite. All right.
called Wild Mood Swings. Um, so yeah. So my last one is gonna be back to the Shabu Shabu album.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna go with Soul Mistake,
Okay.
which is a very interesting song. Lyrically, and it doesn't I don't know, I mean it a lot of their stuff you can see where it's kind of leaning into pop music. This is not. It's just something totally unique and it works. It's not super happy, it's not ska.
Mm,
Um, but it just kind of flows and it's introspective and has some lyrical depth to it. And I like how he sings it. So
sure.
I'm typically I'm pretty easy to please. I mean, some people think I'm a harsh critic, but Give me good vocals, give me good melodies, give me some interesting lyrics, and I'm all right. You know.
Sure. He was a very, very well-read, intelligent guy. I mean, people sort of thought maybe that he was just some sort of airhead. He certainly was not, you know. I mean, he was sort of reading Cocteau and all these sort of different philosophers, and you know, he was certainly no fool, and his
Right.
lyrics pretty damn good for the most part. You don't get to be that successful if you're, well, I suppose you can, but you know, but to be that legendary, being a complete idiot, you know, and he was very far from it,
For sure. Yeah.
you know, bless him. I mean, I think the only solo album he did, he even collaborated with Andy Gill from Gang of Four. I think he produced it. So this guy had some connections, and I think was quite well respected as well.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we don't, I guess when this was out,
Hmm.
I did not think about how is entwined as a business and where all these interactions were coming from and the bands that they toured with and how that could have influenced them.
Hmm.
But now, when I was going back into this, you can kind of hear where that's falling into place, and they toured with some pretty interesting bands at some point.
The only unfortunate thing is when I'm looking at their Wikipedia page and it comes under the section that says legacy, they influenced in the 1975 and Maroon 5. I'm just like, oh my God.
I mean, I guess I could see it.
But yeah,
But yeah, I mean, you don't really see in my periphery. I can't really think of too many bands that I've covered and I said, well, they sound kind of like INXS.
no, that's
Um,
true. They're pretty unique actually,
yeah.
despite how big they were. Yeah, you're not seeing like a whole plethora for the most part of bands that sound like this, you know?
Right. And I mean, I guess you could pinpoint, like, I could pull out their influences and say, oh, well, obviously they were into the Rolling Stones. They were into probably the Specials. Um,
Ecstasy and
they felt, yeah, XTC. I could see them being contemporaries of Oingo Boingo.
yeah,
Um,
definitely.
you know,
Like especially their early stuff, the quirkier side of new wave, but then the later stuff, I guess, it's kind of along the lines of what maybe someone like Robert Palmer was doing in the mid to late 80s.
yeah,
Uh,
and I don't remember because I never saw them live because I
no.
was too busy spending my money on Ozzy. Um, and the earliest person like this that I did see was probably David Bowie in 1987.
Sure, yeah.
Um, and then I think I saw Iggy Pop shortly
Mm,
after in like 88.
wow.
Um, Jane's Addiction opened up for him. But I don't remember, like, I remember when they came through town, but I don't remember who the bands that were opening up for them were.
Mm.
Um, it could have gone either way. It could have been the Hooters. You never
I
know.
think I'm sure there was a tour where they supported Queen. I'm sure
Yeah,
they supported
okay.
Queen one year. So yeah, it kind of makes sense, I guess, to a degree. Both quite a flamboyant frontmen, I suppose. But yeah, but that's the only band I can remember hearing about who they supported, but no one else really.
Right.
So there you go.
There we go.
God rest his soul.
Yeah, there's not going to be another band like them, which is fine.
Uh,
I mean, they can, and I think, it offers us time to kind of go back and dig into their catalog. So that is something kind of cool that, when I'm in a lull where there's not a lot of new music, then, that gives me a chance to go re-explore and rediscover these things and see those connections of, oh yeah, wait, now I can see how all this kind of fits together in the bigger picture of where music was in the 80s.
sure, absolutely. I agree.
Cool. Well, I think next week we're gonna do somebody who's obviously fits into a lot of different kinds of music as we're gonna hit David Bowie. Since
Yeah.
me and you are alternating in our picks, that would
Sure.
make the most sense. So there we go. Thank you guys. Check all these songs out. Give INXS a shot, and we will see you soon.